Welcome. It is good that you are here. Wherever you are, at whatever hour this finds you. You do not need to prepare yourself, and you do not need to be ready in any particular way. Simply being present is enough. This time is set apart gently, without urgency, without demand, as a quiet space where you can listen, rest, or simply remain, knowing that nothing will be required of you as this unfolds. You are welcome to stay awake, and you are welcome to let sleep come naturally. There is no right way to be here. These words are offered slowly, with care, meant to accompany you rather than lead you, to remain near without asking for attention. You are safe to rest in this moment, to breathe, to listen, or to drift, held gently by the quiet pace of what is being spoken. The story we enter now does not rush forward. It does not press for understanding. It begins as life itself often begins, quietly, without announcement, within the ordinary movement of the world. The world continues as it always has. Night falls and lifts again. Lamps are lit and extinguished. People sleep, wake, work, speak, and rest, unaware that anything extraordinary has taken place. Life moves at its familiar pace, steady and unremarkable, carrying within it a moment that does not announce itself loudly enough to interrupt the flow of ordinary days. In a small town called Bethlehem, far from centers of power, far from palaces and courts, a child has been born. There are no crowds gathered around him, no officials waiting, no formal recognition. The place is simple, enclosed, quiet. The air is still. Animals breathe nearby, unaware of meaning, responding only to warmth and presence. The child lies where such animals are usually fed, wrapped carefully in cloth, resting without struggle, without speech. Marie steady watching him, holding him when needed, setting him down when he sleeps. Her body is tired. Her thoughts are full and incomplete. She does not yet understand everything that has happened or everything that will follow. She knows only what is immediately before her. The weight of the child, the softness of his skin, the steady rhythm of his breathing. She remains with him, not explaining, not interpreting, simply present. Joseph moves quietly nearby, attentive without display. He does what must be done. He prepares what little is available. He watches. He waits. He does not speak much. His role is not to interpret this moment, only to protect it, to stand within it faithfully, without drawing attention to himself. The child is named Jesus. He does not yet carry that name in awareness. He does not yet know words, or teaching, or purpose, as it will later be spoken. He exists fully within the vulnerability of infancy, dependent on others, receiving care without understanding its meaning. His presence does not interrupt the world, it enters it gently. Later, shepherds arrive. They do not rush. They come as men accustomed to the night, to quiet movement, to watching without speaking. They stand at a respectful distance. They look. They listen. They do not ask questions that require answers. They have been told something, but what they see is small, fragile, ordinary in appearance. They take this in without explanation. Nothing dramatic happens in their presence. The child does not speak. The night does not change. The world does not pause. And yet they remember this moment, not because of what occurs outwardly, but because of what settles inwardly, quietly, without force. Time moves forward as it always does. Days pass. The child cries, sleeps, feeds, grows. Mary learns his patterns. Joseph returns to work. Life resumes its ordinary rhythms. The child is brought into daily routines, into familiarity, into a household where nothing feels extraordinary to those who live there. Jesus grows slowly, as all children grow. He learns to walk. He learns to speak. He listens long before he teaches. He observes before he acts. He lives within the quiet faithfulness of ordinary days, shaped by family, by work, by prayer, spoken regularly and without performance. There's no hurry placed upon him. Years pass without record. Seasons change. Rome governs. Roads are traveled. Villages remain. Jesus grows into a young man within this world, unseen by most, unremarkable in appearance, fully present in the life around him. Nothing yet presses forward. Nothing yet demands explanation. This is where we remain for now. Before teachings, before miracles, before crowds or conflict, we stay here in the quiet beginning, where the life of Jesus exists without announcement, resting within the ordinary flow of time, waiting without urgency, held gently within a world that does not yet know what it carries. As time continues to move quietly forward, the life of Jesus remains woven into the ordinary rhythms of the world around him. He wakes with the light, rests when the day fades, works with his hands, listens more than he speaks. The years of childhood have passed without announcement, and the years of youth have done the same. Nothing has been forced open. Nothing has been hurried into meaning. He lives in Nazareth, among people who know his name but do not know what it will come to mean. They see him as they see others, as a man shaped by labor, by prayer, by routine. He walks the same paths. He enters the same spaces. He's familiar, unremarkable in appearance, steady in presence. There is no visible difference that draws attention to him. The days pass in repetition. Wood is cut and shaped. Tools are lifted and set down. Meals are shared. Prayers are spoken as they always have been. Words carried by memory rather than explanation. Jesus listens to these prayers. He speaks to him. He allows them to shape him quietly, without outward display. The world remains unchanged. Rome still governs. Soldiers still pass through villages. Taxes are collected. Families live and struggle and endure. Jesus stands within this world fully, without separating himself from it. He does not announce a mission. He does not gather listeners. He waits without marking the waiting. There comes a time when movement begins, but even this movement is unfortunate. Jesus leaves Nazareth and walks toward the Jordan. He does not rush. He joins others traveling the same roads, drawn by word of a man baptizing in the wilderness. The journey is ordinary. Dust rises beneath feet. The sky remains wide and unchanged. John is there by the river, calling people to repentance, immersing them in water. Crowds gather and disperse. Voices rise and fall. Jesus steps forward among them without distinction. He waits his turn. He stands in line. Nothing outward separates him from those around him. When he enters the water, it is done simply. John recognizes him, hesitates, speaks briefly. Jesus answers without elaboration. The water closes over him. He rises again. The moment is quiet, brief, without spectacle for those who watch. Whatever is revealed is not explained. Afterward, Jesus withdraws. He does not begin speaking immediately. He does not gather followers. He goes into the wilderness alone. The land is sparse. The days are long. The silence is deep. He fasts. He remains. The testing that comes is not described here in detail. It passes. He does not linger on it. He emerges without announcement. This is not yet the beginning of crowds or teachings. It is a slowing, a settling. The path has been entered, but it does not accelerate. Jesus returns from the wilderness quietly, carrying within himself what does not yet need to be spoken. We remain here for a while, in the space between obscurity and recognition, between preparation and action. Nothing is demanded of the listener. Nothing is pressed forward. The life of Jesus continues to unfold at its own pace, steady, deliberate, Jesus returns from the wilderness without drawing attention to himself. There is no announcement of what has passed, no explanation offered to those he encounters. He moves again among familiar places, along roads that do not change because of his presence. The world continues as it always has, steady and unconcerned, unaware that something has quietly shifted. He begins to walk along the shores of the Sea of Galilee. The water moves gently, responding only to wind and time. Fishermen work nearby, casting and drawing in nets as they have done countless times before. Their days are shaped by repetition, by patience, by waiting. Jesus watches them without interruption. He does not rush into speech. He allows a moment to remain ordinary before anything is said. When he speaks, his words are simple. He calls a few to follow him, not with force, not with urgency, but with the calm authority that does not require explanation. They respond slowly, leaving what they are doing without haste. There is no dramatic break. Nets are set down. Boats remain. The work of the day ends, as it would have ended anyway. They walk together. They spend time in each other's presence before much is spoken. Jesus does not teach constantly. He does not fill every silence. He allows space. He allows listening. The path forms itself as they move, without a clear destination being named. They enter towns and villages quietly. Jesus speaks in synagogues when invited. He reads from the scriptures. He offers words that feel both familiar and unsettling, not because they're loud, but because they rest where people are not accustomed to listening. Some hear him, some do not. He does not linger where he is not received. He heals those who come to him. Not with display, not with ceremony. A touch, a word. Sometimes only presence. People speak of what they have seen, but Jesus does not encourage the attention. He withdraws often, stepping away from crowds before they fully form. At night, he rests. He prays alone. He remains connected to the same quiet dependence that shaped his hidden years. His life does not fracture into separate roles. What he has always been, he continues to be, now visible only in small ways. The disciples watch him closely, still unsure of what they are following. They walk, eat, listen, and rest. Their understanding is incomplete. Jesus does not correct it immediately. This is where we remain as the act comes to rest. The movement has begun, but it is slow. The story has opened, but it is not rushed forward. Jesus walks among people now, speaking and acting, yet the pace remains gentle, the tone remains quiet. Nothing here demands alertness. Nothing requires effort from the listener. We stay within this early unfolding, where the life of Jesus is present but not yet pressed into intensity, where each step is taken deliberately, and where the path ahead is not announced, only entered. The days continue to unfold as Jesus moves through Galilee, not hurried by the attention that slowly gathers around him. Villagers receive him as they receive any traveler, with curiosity that does not yet know what it is looking at. He walks their roads, enters their homes, sits among them, allowing the pace of ordinary life to remain intact. He teaches often by the sea, where people can stand or sit without crowding one another. The water moves steadily behind him, unchanged by the words spoken near it. When he speaks, he does not raise his voice. He tells of the kingdom of God using images drawn from daily life. Seeds planted in soil, bread prepared quietly, lamps lit at night. He does not explain everything. He allows meaning to settle slowly. Those who listen do so in different ways. Some lean in, attentive. Some remain distant, distracted by their own concerns. Jesus does not press for reaction. He speaks and allows the words to rest where they will. He enters homes where illness has been present for a long time. He approaches those who have been set apart by sickness or weakness. His actions are simple. A hand extended. A word spoken calmly. Healing comes without display. Those who are restored often speak loudly of what has happened, but Jesus does not remain where excitement gathers. Moves on. The disciples remain close, watching more than they understand. They see him speak with authority that does not resemble the authority they know. They see him act without hesitation, yet without urgency. They do not interrupt him with questions at every moment. Much of what they witness remains unspoken between them. Jesus often withdraws from those who seek him. When the day ends, he leaves crowded places and goes to quieter ground. He rests. He prays. He does not allow his life to be consumed by demand. The rhythm of retreat becomes as steady as the rhythm of engagement. In synagogues, he reads from the scriptures and speaks plainly. Some are drawn to him. Others question quietly. Some take offense. Jesus does not argue at length. He does not force agreement. He speaks what he has come to speak and allows the response to take its own shape. He eats with those others avoid: tax collectors, sinners, the overlooked. He sits at table without defensiveness, without explanation. His presence unsettles some, comforts others. He does not separate himself from those considered unclean. He allows closeness where others maintain distance. The days pass like this, one after another, teaching, walking, resting, healing, withdrawing, returning. Nothing yet presses toward a climax. The ministry grows, but it grows slowly, spreading across the land like quiet movement rather than sudden change. We remain era in this steady unfolding, where Jesus is known but not yet fully understood, where his words are heard but not yet grasped, where his presence moves among people without disturbing the natural rhythm of their days. As Jesus continues through towns and villages, the gatherings around him grow larger, though they do not yet feel overwhelming. People come on foot, some from nearby homes, others from farther away, drawn by what they have heard or by a quiet hope they cannot fully explain. They wait patiently. They sit on the ground. They stand along the edges. There is time. There is no sense of urgency pressing them forward. Jesus speaks to them in ways they recognize. He talks about fields and harvests, about workers hired at different hours of the day, about bread needed and left to rise, about fathers and sons, neighbors and strangers. His words remain close to the life they know. He does not raise his voice. He allows pauses. He lets silence carry what words do not. Some approach him privately. They ask questions when others have gone. He answers simply, sometimes directly, sometimes with another story. He does not clarify everything. He allows understanding to grow slowly, as something that cannot be forced. Those who walk away do so without confrontation. Miracles continue, though they are not treated as events to be displayed. A blind man is brought to him. A woman who has suffered for many years reaches out. A child is placed before him. Jesus responds to each without distinction, without ceremony. He does not linger on what has been done. Moves on. The disciples begin to sense that following him will require patience. They are sent out briefly, 2 by 2, to speak and to heal as they have seen him do. They return with stories, some filled with wonder, some with confusion. Jesus listens. He does not celebrate their success or rebuke their uncertainty. He invites them to rest. Crowds sometimes follow them into remote places. Food ruins, Lou the day, Ruslam. Jesus notices before anyone speaks. He does not rush. He tells the people to sit. Bread is shared. Fish are passed hand to hand. Everyone hets. Nothing is wasted. The moment does not linger in explanation. The people depart quietly. There are days when opposition grows more visible. Religious leaders observe him closely. They listen for words that might trouble the order they know. They question him. Jesus answers calmly, without defensiveness. He does not argue to win. He speaks what is true and allows tension to remain unresolved. At night, he withdraws again. He goes to the hills or to quiet places near the water. He prays alone. He rests. The disciples sleep nearby, still learning that silence is as much a part of this path as action. The rhythm continues without sharp turns, teaching and healing, movement and stillness, presence and withdrawal. The ministry expands, but it does not hurry itself. Jesus remains attentive to individuals, even as the number of listeners increases. He does not let the crowd replace the person. We remain within this steady flow. The days do not build toward spectacle. They accumulate gently, forming a life lived openly yet without haste. Jesus walks on, unpressured by expectation, allowing each moment to arrive and pass in its own time. As the days continue, the words of Jesus begin to reach deeper places within those who listen. Some hear comfort, others hear challenge. His teachings remain simple in form, but they rest where certainty is not easily held. He speaks of loving enemies, of forgiving repeatedly, of giving without being seen. He speaks of losing life in order to find it. He does not soften these words, but he does not press them forward with urgency either. He allows them to remain. Not everyone stays. Some turn back quietly, unsettled by what they hear. Jesus does not call after them. He does not explain himself further. He allows space for departure without judgment. Those who remain do so with incomplete understanding, carrying questions they do not yet ask aloud. The disciples struggle at times. They misunderstand his words. They argue among themselves about position and importance. Jesus listens. When he speaks, he does so gently, redirecting without humiliating, correcting without urgency. He places a child among them. He reminds them that greatness does not appear as they expect it to. There are moments when danger feels near. Crowds grow restless. Authorities become more watchful. Jesus does not change his pace. He continues to move between towns, sometimes avoiding places where conflict would escalate too quickly. He does not seek confrontation, nor does he hide from it. He allows events to approach at their own time. He calms storms when fear overtakes those with him. He speaks a word, and the wind settles. The water stills. Those present are left quiet, not celebrating, not shouting, simply aware that something beyond their understanding has occurred. Jesus does not linger on their amazement. He continues on. He enters regions considered unclean by many. He speaks with those others avoid. He listens. He heals. He allows closeness where distance has long been maintained. These actions deepen the unease of those watching from afar. They begin to speak more openly against him. Still, Jesus does not hurry toward conflict. He continues to eat, to walk, to speak, to rest. His days remain shaped by the same rhythm that marked his early ministry. Nothing feels rushed. Nothing feels delayed. Everything arrives when it arrives. The disciples feel the weight of what is unfolding, though they cannot yet name it. They sense that the path is narrowing, even as the crowds remain large. Jesus speaks to them privately at times, hinting at suffering and rejection. They do not understand. He does not force clarity upon them. The ministry continues in this way, balanced between welcome and resistance, understanding and confusion. Jesus remains present within it all, neither withdrawing entirely, nor pressing forward aggressively. He allows the tension to exist without allowing it to dominate. We remain in this middle ground, where the words of Jesus have begun to unsettle and to heal in equal measure, where the path ahead is becoming visible but not yet unavoidable, where each step is still taken slowly, deliberately, without haste. As the days move forward, there is a subtle shift in the way Jesus speaks about what lies ahead. He does not announce an ending, but his words begin to carry a quiet gravity. He speaks of journeys that lead toward Jerusalem. He hints at rejection, at suffering, at things that disciples do not want to hear. They resist these words inwardly, hoping the path might turn another way. Jesus continues to teach openly, though he becomes more deliberate about where he goes and how long he remains. He avoids unnecessary confrontation, yet he does not soften the truth of what he speaks. His presence grows heavier for those who oppose him, not because he seeks conflict, but because his words and actions expose what they would rather keep hidden. He heals again, even as danger grows closer. He restores sight. He strengthens bodies worn by years of illness. Each act of mercy is done without display, without explanation. He does not celebrate what has been done. He allows gratitude to remain simple and unspoken. The disciples walk beside him, aware now that following him is leading somewhere they do not yet understand. They continue to misunderstand much of what he says. They ask questions. They receive answers that do not yet resolve their confusion. Jesus does not correct every misunderstanding. He allows time to remain part of the teaching. Crowds still gather, but their tone begins to change. Some are curious, some are suspicious, some are openly hostile. Jesus moves among them with the same calm presence that has marked him from the beginning. He does not change himself in response to approval or rejection. There are moments of quiet retreat. Jesus withdraws again to pray alone. He spends time in silence. He rests. These moments become more frequent, not as escape, but as grounding. The disciples sense that something significant approaches, though it has not yet arrived. The path continues toward Jerusalem, not hurried, not delayed. The ministry does not end here, but it changes in tone. The openness of the early days gives way to a quieter intensity. Words carry more weight. Actions feel more deliberate. We remain here as the act comes to rest. The ministry is unfolded fully, revealing both welcome and resistance, healing and tension. Nothing has yet reached its breaking point. The story has not turned toward its final movement. We stay in this space of gathering gravity, where the life of Jesus continues forward, steady and unhurried, toward what must come next. The journey toward Jerusalem unfolds without haste. Jesus walks with his disciples along familiar roads, passing through towns and villages that know the weight of pilgrims moving toward the city. The air feels different now, not because anything dramatic has happened yet, but because direction has quietly been set. The path does not rush them forward. It simply continues. A state trabel, Jesus speaks more openly about what lies ahead, though his words remain measured. He tells them again that suffering and rejection await him in Jerusalem, that he will be handed over, that death will come. The disciples listen but do not absorb what is being said. These words do not fit what they expect or hope for. Jesus does not press understanding upon them. He allows the words to remain unforced. Along the way, people continue to approach him. Some ask for healing. Others ask questions. He responds, as he always has, with attention given fully to each person. A blind man calls out to him near the road. Jesus stops. He listens. He heals him without delay, without explanation. The man sees. The road continues. There are moments of teaching as they move, spoken quietly, sometimes only to those closest to him. Jesus speaks of humility, of service, of a kingdom not built on power. The disciples still argue among themselves about position, about who will be greatest. Jesus listens. He responds gently, reminding them again that greatness is not what they imagine it to be. When they come near Jerusalem, Jesus pauses in nearby towns. He does not enter the city immediately. He remains for a time, teaching and resting, allowing the moment to ripen without being forced. Crowds gather again. Some welcome him openly, others watch carefully, already uneasy with his presence. He speaks parables that grow more pointed, though still calm. Stories of tenants and vineyards, of invitations refused, of stones rejected. Those who hear begin to understand that these words are meant for them. The tension increases, not because Jesus raises his voice, but because his meaning becomes harder to avoid. Still, he does not hurry. He eats with friends. He rests. He prays. The days move forward steadily, each one placed gently beside the last. The city waits, visible from a distance, unchanged in appearance, carrying within it what is not yet unfolded. The disciples feel the nearness of something they cannot name. Jesus remains composed, attentive, unhurt. He has not altered his way of being. He continues to walk, to speak, to listen, to rest, fully present within each moment as it comes. We remain on the edge of the city, where the journey has narrowed into direction, where words have grown heavier without becoming loud, and where the path forward is clear without being rushed. Nothing is yet broken open. Everything is still being held. When the time comes for Jesus to enter Jerusalem, it happens without haste. He does not arrive unexpectedly. The city has been anticipating pilgrims for days, perhaps weeks. Roads leading inward are filled with people moving in the same direction, carrying supplies, speaking quietly among themselves, preparing for the days ahead. Jerusalem stands open, receiving them, as it always has. Jesus approaches the city from the Mount of Olives. He pauses there briefly. He sends two of his disciples ahead to bring a young donkey. Nothing is hurried. Nothing is improvised. The animal is brought. Jesus sits upon it. The gesture is simple, unforced, and yet it carries meaning that many will only later understand. As he moves forward, some begin to recognize him. Word spreads slowly at first, then more openly. People gather along the road. They place cloaks on the ground. Branches are cut and laid before him. Voices rise, not in chaos, but in shared anticipation. They speak words of praise. They welcome him as a king, though their understanding of what that means remains incomplete. Jesus receives their welcome without display. He does not encourage their excitement, nor does he reject it. He remains calm, attentive, aware of the distance between what they hope for and what is to come. As the city comes into view, he looks upon it quietly, seeing beyond what is visible to others. When he enters Jerusalem, the city stirs. Some ask who he is. Others answer simply that he is a teacher from Galilee. The streets absorb the moment without stopping. Markets continue, people pass by. The city remains itself, layered with expectation, tension, and routine. Jesus goes to the temple. He observes, he watches those who move through it. He sees the buying and selling, the noise, the exchange of money. He does not act immediately. He leaves the city and returns with his disciples to rest nearby. The moment is not forced open. On another day, he returns to the temple and acts decisively. He overturns tables. He drives out those who turned the house of prayer into a marketplace. His actions are firm but measured. His words are clear. The disruption is brief. It does not erupt into chaos. The authorities take notice. In the days that follow, Jesus teaches openly in the temple courts. People gather again. Some listen with attentiveness, some with suspicion. Religious leaders question him, testing his words, seeking to trap him. Jesus responds calmly, answering without anxiety, speaking truth without aggression. The tension grows, but it remains contained. At night, he leaves the city. He returns to quieter places. He rests. He prays. Each day follows this rhythm, entering and leaving, teaching and withdrawing. The city holds its breath without knowing it. We're a minere within these days in Jerusalem, where welcome and opposition exist side by side, where public attention grows heavier, and where Jesus continues to move with the same steadiness that has marked him from the beginning. The path forward has narrowed, but it is not yet closed. The days in Jerusalem continue with a steady rhythm. Each morning, Jesus enters the city again, walking its streets with familiarity that has come quickly. He teaches in the temple courts, standing among pillars worn, smoothed by generations before him. His voice remains calm. His words are clear. They carry authority without force. People listen closely now. Some are drawn by hope, others by concern. Many remain uncertain, sensing that something important is taking shape without knowing how to name it. Jesus speaks of responsibility, of faithfulness, of hearts that appear righteous outwardly while remaining distant inwardly. His words do not accuse loudly, but they rest where they cannot be ignored. Religious leaders approach him repeatedly. They question his authority. They challenge him on law, on tradition, on allegiance. Jesus answers each question patiently, sometimes directly, sometimes by turning the question back upon them. He does not raise his voice. He does not retreat. The exchanges remain contained, but the distance between them widens. He speaks openly now of judgment and accountability, using images drawn from scripture that those listening know well. Parables of watchfulness, of servants who must give account, of a vineyard entrusted to others. Those who hear understand that these words are not abstract. They are being addressed. The disciples remain near him, listening, watching, uneasy. They sense that the atmosphere has shifted. The days feel heavier. Jesus speaks to them privately at times, preparing them without fully explaining. He tells them to remain awake, to stay attentive, even as he himself remains composed. One evening, as they leave the temple, the disciples admire the buildings, the stones, the visible strength of the city. Jesus listens, then speaks quietly of a time when these structures will not stand. His words unsettle them. They ask him later, away from the city, what these things mean. He answers carefully, speaking of trials, of endurance, of faithfulness. Amid uncertainty, as night falls, Jesus withdraws again to the Mount of Olives. He sits with his disciples. The city lights glow behind them. He speaks of vigilance, of readiness, of love that does not grow cold. His words do not incite fear. They invite steadiness. The days pass like this, each one carrying greater weight than the last. though nothing has yet broken open. Opposition has become organized. Plans are forming quietly among those who feel threatened by him. Jesus continues to teach openly, not avoiding danger, not seeking it. We remain airy in these final days before everything shifts, where truth is spoken plainly, where resistance is hardened, and where the calm presence of Jesus stands unchanged within a city that is growing increasingly restless. The path forward is no longer distant. It is close now, though still unannounced. As the days draw closer to their turning point, the movement around Jesus becomes more deliberate, though nothing yet erupts into action. Conversations take place in quiet corners. Decisions are considered behind closed doors. Those who oppose him begin to align their intentions, not publicly, but carefully, aware of the crowds and the attention that still surrounds him. Jesus remains present within this tightening atmosphere without changing his way. He continues to teach openly during the day, speaking with clarity that does not soften to preserve comfort. His words carry both invitation and warning. Some hear them as hope, others hear them as threat. He does not attempt to control how they are received. He spends more time with his disciples now, not separating himself from the crowds entirely, but drawing closer to those who have walked with him from the beginning. There is a quiet intimacy in these moments, though much remains unspoken. They share meals, they rest together. Jesus looks at them with attention that does not need explanation. There are moments when he speaks directly of what is coming, though still without full detail. He tells him that he will be betrayed, that suffering awaits him, that death will not have the final word. The disciples struggle to hold these words. They hear them, but they do not yet understand how to carry them. The city continues its preparations for the feast. Pilgrims arrive in greater numbers. The streets grow more crowded. The tension becomes part of the air, subtle but present. Jesus moves through this environment without anxiety, attentive to each moment as it comes. At night, he withdraws again to pray. He spends long hours in quiet places, alone with the Father. These moments are not described to others. They are not performed. They are simply lived, deeply, faithfully, as he has always prayed. Those who seek his arrest continue to watch him closely, waiting for an opportunity that will not cause public unrest. They speak among themselves. Plans form slowly. Judas moves among them, his presence unnoticed by most, his intentions still hidden. Jesus remains unaware of nothing, yet he does not resist what is unfolding. He does not flee the city. He does not alter his paths. He continues to walk openly, allowing events to draw near in their own time. This is where the act comes to rest. The ministry has led here, step by step, without haste. Jerusalem stands fully before him now, carrying both welcome and opposition, devotion and betrayal. The final movement has not yet begun, but everything necessary for it is now in place. We rimin. Eritiejo, what is about to unfold, where silence carries as much weight as action, where the life of Jesus stands steady and unbroken, preparing to move into the final days without fear, without resistance, and without haste. As the time of the feast approaches, Jesus remains in Jerusalem with his disciples, moving through the city with the same quiet steadiness that has marked every step of his life. The streets are full now, voices overlap. Lamps are lit as evening comes. The air carries anticipation, though few understand what they are anticipating. Jesus arranges to share a final meal with those closest to him. The preparation is simple. A room is made ready, bread is set out, wine is poured. When they gather, there is no sense of ceremony imposed from outside. They recline together as they have done many times before, familiar with one another's presence, unaware that this meal will linger in memory longer than all the others. As they eat, Jesus speaks calmly. He gives thanks. He breaks the bread and shares it among them, telling them that it is given for them. He takes the cup and offers it to them, speaking of a new covenant poured out. His words are clear, but their meaning is not yet fully grasped. The moment does not feel dramatic to those who sit with him. It feels intimate, quiet, weighted with something they cannot yet name. He speaks also of betrayal. The words fall into the room without accusation, without raised voice. Each disciple looks inward, questioning themselves. Jesus identifies the one who will betray him, though even then the full meaning of what is happening remains obscured. Judas leaves quietly. The others do not fully understand where he is going or why. Jesus continues to speak, offering words of reassurance rather than alarm. He tells them not to let their hearts be troubled. He speaks of going away and preparing a place. He promises the coming of the Spirit who will remain with them. His tone is steady, not urgent. He is not attempting to prepare them through fear, but through presence. After the meal, they sing together softly, as was customary. Then they leave the city and walk toward the Mount of Olives. The night is calm. The path is familiar. Their steps are unhurried. Nothing outward signals that the world is about to change. Jesus speaks again as they walk. He tells them that they will fall away. Peter protests. Jesus listens, then speaks gently of what will come before morning. There is no argument. There is no attempt to assert strength. The words are spoken and allowed to remain. They arrive at a place called Gethsemane. Jesus asks the disciples to stay nearby while he goes a short distance away to pray. He carries with him a weight that has not yet been visible, though it has always been present. He asks them to remain awake, not with anxiety, but with him. We remind Mary at the threshold of the garden, where the final hours begin to take shape quietly, where love is spoken plainly, where warning and comfort exist side by side, and where the path forward narrows without being forced. Jesus moves a short distance away from the disciples and enters deeper into the garden. The ground beneath him is uneven, covered with earth that has been walked upon many times before. Olive trees stand quietly around him, their branches still, their presence unchanged by what is unfolding nearby. The night air is cool. The sounds of the city are distant now, softened by space and darkness. He kneels. He lowers himself close to the ground. His prayer begins without formality, without display. He speaks plainly to the Father, naming what lies before him without avoidance. He asks that the cup might pass from him, if it is possible. The request is not theatrical. It is human, direct, spoken from a place of full awareness. He remains there, still. Time stretches. His body carries the weight of what is coming. The tension does not appear as panic, but as deep strain held quietly. His breathing slows. His words become fewer. He waits in the silence between prayers, listening without expectation of an answer that would remove what must be faced. Returning to the disciples, he finds them asleep. Their bodies have yielded to fatigue. He does not wake them with anger. He speaks gently, reminding them to stay awake, to remain with him. There is no rebuke meant to shame them. There is only the desire for presence. He returns again to prayer. The same words are spoken. The same surrender is repeated. Nothing new is added. Nothing is resolved outwardly. The prayer remains open, unfinished, resting in trust rather than certainty. Time continues to pass without being measured. An angel comes to strengthen him. This presence is quiet, not described in detail, not announced. Jesus receives the strength without comment. His resolve deepens, not as relief, but as clarity. He remains fully present within what must be done. Again, he returns to the disciples. Again, they sleep. Their eyes are heavy. Their understanding remains incomplete. Jesus does not press them further. He allows them their rest. He knows they cannot yet carry what he is carrying. The night deepens. The garden remains unchanged. The trees do not move. The ground does not respond. The stillness holds everything equally. Jesus rises finally from prayer. Not hurried, not reluctant. His face is set. His voice remains calm. He tells the disciples that the hour has come. Even this statement is not dramatic. It is spoken as a simple acknowledgement of time. He does not flee. He does not resist. He waits. Torches appear at the edge of the garden. Footsteps approach. Judas leads those who have come to arrest him. Jesus steps forward before anyone asks. He identifies himself clearly. There is no confusion about who he is. When Peter reacts with violence, Jesus stops him. He heals the one who has been injured. Even now, his concern remains with restoring rather than resisting. He allows himself to be taken without struggle. The disciples scatter into the night. Jesus is led away. The garden returns to stillness almost immediately, as though nothing has happened there at all. We remain here for a moment longer, in the quiet that follows arrest, where prayer has ended and surrender has been completed, where love has been held to its fullest extent without display, and where the path forward has become unavoidable without ever having been rushed. Jesus is led through the quiet streets as night gives way slowly to early morning. The city has not yet fully awakened. Lamps still burn in places. Doors remain closed. The sound of footsteps echoes softly against stone. He walks without resistance, bound yet composed, attentive to each step without haste. He is brought first before the high priest. Those gathered there speak in low voices at first, then more insistently. Questions are asked. Accusations are offered. Witnesses speak, though their words do not align. Jesus listens without interruption. He does not defend himself against every claim. He allows the disorder of the accusations to remain visible. When he speaks, he does so briefly. His words are clear, measured, and few. He does not attempt to persuade. He does not seek release. When asked directly who he is, he answers truthfully. The response is enough. The decision begins to form. Nearby, Peter remains within reach of the scene, close enough to hear fragments, far enough to feel uncertain. He warms himself by a fire as others do the same. Questions are asked of him quietly at first. He answers quickly, denying association. The words come without planning. Fear moves faster than reflection. A second time, he is questioned. Again he denies knowing Jesus. His voice carries urgency now, as though repetition might secure distance. The fire continues to burn. Faces remain indistinct in the half-glow. No one presses him further, yet the weight of what he has said does not leave him. A third time the question comes, sharper now. Peter denies again, this time with insistence. As he speaks, the sound of a rooster carries through the morning air. The sound is brief, ordinary, and unmistakable. Peter remembers what Jesus had said. He turns away, overwhelmed, leaving the fire behind. His grief is not loud. It is inward and complete. Jesus is taken from one authority to another. The questioning continues. He is brought before Pilate. The atmosphere changes, becoming more formal, more political. Pilate asks questions with a different tone, less concerned with truth than with order. Jesus answers when necessary. He remains mostly silent. Pilate finds no clear reason for condemnation, yet the pressure of the crowd grows. Voices rise. Demands are made. Pilate attempts compromise, offering release, suggesting alternatives. The crowd responds with insistence. the noise increases. Jesus remains still within it all, not responding to provocation. His moqueta robe is placed on him. A crown of thorns is pressed upon his head. Soldiers laugh. They strike him. These actions are carried out without urgency, as routine cruelty rather than passion. Jesus endures without retaliation. He does not speak. Pilate brings him out again, presenting him to the crowd. The words spoken are brief. The response is decisive. Pilate yields. Water is brought. Hands are washed publicly. Responsibility is displaced. The decision is finalized. Jesus is led away to be crucified. The sentence has been pronounced. The path forward is now set. The noise begins to recede behind him as he is taken beyond the city walls. The morning continues to unfold like any other, indifferent to what has been decided. We remainere within these hours of accusation and denial, where truth stands quietly amid confusion, where loyalty falters without malice, and where Jesus continues forward without resistance, carrying what must still be carried, unbroken in presence even as the world around him moves toward its final act. Jesus is led outside the city, beyond the familiar streets and walls, to a place where executions are carried out routinely. The path is uneven. He walks slowly, weakened by the night without rest, by the beating, by the weight of what has already been endured. A wooden cross is placed upon him. He carries it for a time, step by step, until his strength gives way. Another is compelled to carry it the rest of the distance. Jesus does not resist this help. E allows Italiano. They arrive at a place called Golgotha. The ground is bare. The air is open. There is nothing set apart here, except the purpose for which the place is used. Soldiers move with practiced efficiency. There is no urgency, no ceremony. This is not new to them. They know what to do. Jesus is laid upon the wood. His arms are stretched out. Nails are driven through his hands and feet. The actions are direct, methodical. He does not cry out in protest. He does not curse those who carry this out. When he speaks, his words are few and restrained. He asks forgiveness for those who do not understand what they are doing. The request is spoken calmly, without accusation. The cross is raised. Jesus is lifted between two others who are being crucified as well. The sky remains as it was. People gather at a distance. Some watch silently. Others speak among themselves. Religious leaders stand nearby, observing Temok, him repeating words that challenge his identity. Jesus does not respond. Time stretches. The hours pass slowly. The weight of his body pulls against the nails. His breathing becomes labored. Each breath requires effort. Still, he remains attentive. He sees his mother standing nearby. He speaks to her and to the disciple beside her, entrusting them to one another. Even now, his concern is for those around him. Darkness begins to cover the land. The light dims. The air feels heavy. Jesus speaks again, voicing abandonment, drawing words from the Psalms he has known since childhood. He does not explain the cry. He allows it to stand as it is, raw and honest. He thirsts. A sponge is lifted to his lips. He receives it briefly. His strength continues to fade. The sounds around him soften. The mocking lessens. The watching becomes quiet. Finally, he speaks again. He declares that what he has come to do is finished. He entrusts his spirit to the Father. His body stills. His breathing stops. The moment does not announce itself loudly. It simply arrives. The earth responds. The ground trembles. The curtain of the temple is torn. Those nearby sense that something irreversible has occurred. A soldier acknowledges what he has seen. Others leave quietly, striking their breasts, unsettled. Jesus' body is taken down from the cross before evening comes. He is wrapped carefully. Those who remain handle him gently, with grief that does not yet know how to speak. He is laid in a tomb cut from rock. A stone is rolled into place. The entrance is sealed. Today ends. The Sabbath begins. The city returns to its rhythm of rest. Silence settles. Nothing further is done. We rimanere in the stillness that follows death, where the life of Jesus has been given fully, where words have ceased, where movement has stopped. The story does not conclude here, but it rests here for now. Ilden Kit, waiting without urgency for what has not yet been revealed. The day that follows arrives without announcement. The light returns to the sky, but nothing stirs in response to it. The city of Jerusalem enters the Sabbath as it always has, slowing its movements, closing its gates, quieting its work. Lamps are extinguished, voices soften. The world settles into rest, unaware of the weight it carries. Jesus lies in the tomb. His body is wrapped and placed within stone. The space is cool, enclosed, undisturbed. No one enters. No one speaks. The stone remains where it was rolled. Nothing about the tomb suggests expectation or promise. It holds only stillness. Those who loved him remain apart. Mary rests somewhere nearby, her grief contained and silent. The disciples are scattered, hidden, uncertain. They do not yet gather to remember. They do not yet speak of hope. They hold only loss, heavy and unresolved. Their thoughts do not move easily. Their words come slowly, if at all. The religious leaders rest as well. Their concern has eased. The tension of the previous days has passed. The problem, as they see it, has been resolved. The Sabbath allows them to step away from conflict, from decision, from consequence. The city breathes again. Time passes, but it does not feel like passage. The hours do not carry direction. There is no movement toward anything. The silence stretches without shape, without sin. Nothing arrives to interrupt it. The earth itself seems to hold still. The wind moves gently, as it always does, without bearing news. The sky remains wide and unchanged. Life continues in small, ordinary walls, disconnected from the tomb that remains sealed. Inside that sealed place, there is no motion, no breath, no sound. Death holds what it has taken. There is no struggle. There is no resistance. There is only the stillness that follows completion. This day does not rush toward meaning. It does not explain itself. It remains exactly what it is. A pause, a suspension, a silence between what has been given and what has not yet been revealed. We rimanere within the Sabbath quiet, where nothing is asked of anyone, where grief is not resolved, where hope has not yet returned to language. The story does not move forward. It rests fully, deeply, without disturbance. The Sabbath continues without interruption. Morning passes into afternoon, and afternoon settles slowly toward evening. Though the passage of time feels indistinct, the city remains subdued. Doors stay closed. Voices are rare and low. Movement is minimal, not out of fear, but out of custom. Rest has been commanded, and rest is kept. The tomb remains sealed. The stone has not shifted. No one approaches it. Guards remain nearby, standing watch without conversation. Their presence does not disturb the stillness. They wait because they have been told to wait, not because they expect anything to happen. Inside the tomb, there's no sign of life. The body of Jesus remains where it was placed, wrapped carefully, treated with respect, now untouched. The space holds only absence. No light enters. No sound forms. The stillness is complete, unchallenged. Those who followed him remain separated from one another. They do not gather openly. They do not yet speak the story aloud. Each see, Mary remains with her grief. Not dramatic, not outwardly expressed, but total. The finality of what she has seen has not softened. The image of the cross remains close. There is no language that can carry what she holds. She does not seek explanation. Se endures. Se endures. The disciples remembered their words of confidence, their vows of loyalty, their promises made too quickly. These memories surface quietly, without accusation from anyone else. Regret does not move quickly. It settles and remains heavy and unresolved. The religious leaders continue their Sabbath rest. Their concern has been set aside for the day. The city has returned to order. The disturbance has ended. The silence is interpreted as closure. They do not visit the tomb. They do not look back. The earth itself offers no sign, no tremor, no voice, no visible change. Creation does not announce what it holds. The sky remains wide and indifferent. The land remains firm beneath foot. This day does not answer questions. It does not offer meaning. It does not soften grief or explain loss. It remains exactly as it is. A long pause between promise and fulfillment, between life given and life restored. Nothing presses forward. Nothing resolves. The silence holds everything without discrimination, allowing sorrow, confusion, and emptiness to exist without being hurried away. We remain deeply within this Sabbath stillness, where hope has not yet returned to speech, where faith has not yet found footing again, and where the story does not advance, but waits completely, fully, without urgency. The Sabbath stretches on, unbroken and undisturbed. There is no marker within it to suggest progress. The light shifts slowly across the city, though few notice. Inside homes, people sit quietly, some reading familiar words, others simply resting, unaware that the stillness they keep mirrors a deeper stillness held elsewhere. The tomb remains unchanged. Stone presses against stone. The seal holds. Nothing moves. The guards remain in place, their watch uneventful. Time for them becomes routine again, measured only by the length of standing, by the weight of armor, by the quiet repetition of breathing. There is nothing to report. Within the sealed space, the stillness remains complete. The body of Jesus does not stir. Death holds its claim without resistance. There is no struggle within the darkness, no sign of conflict. The absence of life is total, and it does not announce itself. It simply is. Those who loved him continue to wait, though they do not yet know what they are waiting for. Their waiting has no direction. It is not hopeful. It is not expectant. It is simply endured. The hours pass slowly, each one heavy, each one indistinct. From the next, some remember his words, spoken earlier, about rising again. These words surfaced briefly, then fade beneath the weight of what has been seen. Memory struggles against certainty. The cross remains more real than promise. Silence feels more truthful than hope. Peter sits alone somewhere, replaying moments he wishes he could return to. The sound of his own voice denying Jesus remains sharp in his memory. There is no way to undo what has been done. He does not yet imagine restoration. He does not yet imagine forgiveness. He waits within regret, unmoving. Others remember moments of closeness, meals shared, laughter that now feels distant. These memories do not yet bring comfort. They only remind them of absence. Grief does not move quickly. It settles and remains. The city continues its Sabbath rhythm. Children remain indoors. Fires are kept low. Conversation is sparse. Jerusalem rests, believing the disturbance of the previous days has ended. The tension that filled the streets has dissolved into ordinary quiet. Creation itself remains unchanged. The sky does not open. The ground does not shift. There is no sign offered to interpret. The silence is uninterrupted, complete, and seemingly final. This is the longest part of the story. Not because anything happens, but because nothing does. The waiting's not filled, it is empty, and the emptiness remains without relief. We stay here, deep within this unbroken stillness, where grief has not yet loosened its grip, where faith does not yet speak, where the story refuses to move forward, choosing instead to rest fully in the silence that follows loss. The Sabbath reaches its later hours without signaling that it is doing so. The light outside softens and fades, though the change is gradual enough to feel almost imperceptible. Inside the city, the stillness remains intact. Nothing announces transition. Nothing marks that this day is nearing its end. The tomb remains sealed. The stone has not shifted even slightly. The space inside remains closed, untouched by air or sound. The body of Jesus lies as it was placed, wrapped and unmoving. There is no sense within the tomb of waiting or expectation. Death holds what it has taken without struggle and without comment. The guards continue their watch, their posture unchanged. Fatigue settles into their bodies, but their minds remain dull with routine. This is not the first tomb they have guarded. Nothing here suggests that this one is different. The silence offers no resistance to their assumptions. Those who loved Jesus remain enclosed within their own spaces. They do not yet gather to speak his name aloud. Grief has not become communal. It remains private, interior, heavy. Each person holds their own version of loss, their own memory of the final moments, their own unresolved questions. Mary's grief does not move toward words. It rests in the body, in breath that feels shallow, in the weight that presses against the chest. There is no attempt to interpret what has happened. There is only endurance. The stillness does not comfort her, but it does not accuse her either. It simply remains. The disciples do not yet imagine the future. Their thoughts do not move forward. They circle around what has already occurred, replaying moments without finding resolution. Faith does not yet offer language. Prayer does not yet rise. Silence feels more honest than speech. The city continues its rest. The Sabbath laws are kept. Fires are low. Doors remain closed. Jerusalem breathes slowly, satisfied that order has been restored. The events of the previous days begin to feel distant, as though they have already passed into memory. Creation itself remains unchanged. The stars appear in the sky without comment. The night deepens. The earth does not tremble. There is no sign, no interruption, no hint of what is still concealed. Everything appears settled. This is the depth of the waiting. Not a waiting filled with hope, but a waiting emptied of it. Not an anticipation, but a suspension. The silence does not promise anything. It does not reassure. It simply holds. Nothing here resolves. Nothing here prepares. The story does not gather itself for movement. It remains still, fully, completely, allowing absence to be felt without mitigation. We remain here until the silence has said everything it can say, until nothing more can be taken away, until even the sense of waiting begins to loosen its grip, not because something has happened, but because there is nothing left to expect. The silence does not end suddenly. It loosens, the night remains, but it has begun to thin. The sky shifts almost imperceptibly, moving from complete darkness toward the faint suggestion of morning. Nothing announces this change. It happens as light always does, quietly, without urgency, without sound. The tomb remains sealed. The stone still rests where it was placed. The guards stand nearby, tired, inattentive, unaware that anything has changed or is about to change. The air is still. The ground is firm. Everything appears exactly as it was. Inside the tomb, the stillness that is held for so long does not break with force. There is no struggle. There is no sudden breath drawn in panic. Life does not rush back. It returns gently, without noise, without disturbance, as though it has never needed to announce itself to be real. Jesus rises. The movement is unhurried. His body is restored without violence, without urgency. The wounds remain, but they no longer govern him. Breath returns calmly. Strength is present without strain. He does not stand immediately. He's aware, present, whole. The grave clothes lie where they are. They no longer bind him. He does not tear them away. They simply fall aside, emptied of their purpose. The space that once held death now holds quiet life. The stone is moved, not with effort, not with resistance, but as though it no longer holds authority. The guards do not understand what they witness. Fear overtakes them. They fall back, overwhelmed, unable to remain present to what is happening. The moment passes them by without explanation. The tomb stands open now, not as a declaration, but Sasaf. Light enters the space, slowly. The morning air moves gently inside. Nothing rushes out to meet it. Jesus steps beyond the tomb without haste. He does not look back. He does not speak. The garden around him remains unchanged. The same trees, the same ground that held his prayer only days before. The world has not rearranged itself to receive him. He stands quietly in the early light, alive, present, unhidden, not seeking witnesses, not gathering attention. The resurrection has occurred without audience, without announcement, without demand. The silence that held death now holds life, just as completely, just as quietly. We remain in these first moments, where resurrection is real but not yet spoken, where victory has not yet found language, where the world has not yet learned what has happened, and where Jesus stands living again without urgency, without spectacle, without interruption. The garden remains quiet as morning continues to open itself slowly. The light does not rush across the ground. It settles gently, touching leaves, stone, and earth without drawing attention. Birds move softly in the distance. The air is cool. Nothing about the world suggests that anything extraordinary has taken place. Mary comes to the tomb while it is still early. She walks alone, carrying spices prepared with care, intending to complete what had been left unfinished. Her steps are steady, though her body carries the weight of grief. She is not expecting change. She is coming to tend to death, not to meet life. When she sees that the stone has been moved, confusion rises before hope. The open tomb does not signal resurrection to her. It signals disturbance. Loss layered upon loss. She turns and runs to tell the others. Her words urgent but unclear. They come, look inside, and leave again. Uncertain, carrying questions they cannot yet form. Marie remains. stands outside the tomb and weeps. Her grief has not loosened. Tears fall without restraint. She bends to look inside, seeing where the body had been laid. Now, absent, the emptiness does not comfort her. It deepens the sense that even death has not been allowed to remain undisturbed. She turns away from the tomb and sees a man standing nearby. She does not recognize him. Her eyes are clouded by grief. Her mind does not yet allow for what stands before her. She assumes he is the gardener. She asks where the body has been taken. Her voice carries only loss. Jesus speaks her name. The sound of it does not break the silence violently. It rests within it. The familiarity of his voice reaches her before understanding does. Recognition comes slowly, not as shock, but as something remembered. She turns fully toward him. She sees him now, not as she expects, but as he is. She reaches for him. He speaks gently, asking her not to cling to him as before. His presence is real, but changed, not distant, not withdrawn, yet no longer bound by what has been. He speaks of returning to the Father. His words are calm, steady, without urgency. Mari listens. The grief that has held her does not vanish instantly. It loosens, tears remain, but they no longer carry the same weight. She is given a task, simple and direct, to go and tell the others that he is alive. She leaves the garden changed, though the garden itself remains the same. The tomb stays open. The light continues to grow. Jesus does not follow her immediately. He remains where he is, unhurried, allowing the mourning to continue as it always has. Resurrection does not rush to announce itself. It moves quietly from one person to another, not overwhelming, not demanding belief, but offering presence. The world does not yet know. Most of it continues unchanged. We're a minority in this early hour, where recognition has begun, but understanding has not yet caught up, where life has returned without noise, and where the risen Jesus stands within the familiar world, alive again, without pressing himself forward. As the morning unfolds further, Jesus begins to appear to those who had walked with him. Though each meeting happens quietly, without gathering attention, he does not announce himself publicly. He does not return to the temple courts. He comes to individuals and small groups, meeting them where they already are. Two of the disciples walk along the road to Emmaus. Their steps are slow. Their conversation turns again and again to what has happened, circling around disappointment, confusion, loss. They speak of hopes that now feel misplaced. Jesus walks beside them, unrecognized. He listens without interruption. He allows them to speak fully. As Tay walk, he speaks to them, opening the scriptures gently, tracing the story they know without rushing to its conclusion. His words are familiar, steady, without urgency. Their hearts respond before their understanding does. The road stretches on without being measured. When they reach their destination, they urge him to stay. He sits with them at the table. He takes bread, blesses it, breaks it, and gives it to them. In this simple act, recognition comes. Their eyes are opened. Jesus is known to them. Tain he's gone. The moment does not linger. The recognition remains. Elsewhere, the disciples are gathered behind closed doors. Fear still holds them. The room is quiet. Voices are low. They speak of Mary's words, of the empty tomb, of things they cannot yet reconcile. The door remains shut. The outside world feels unsafe. Jesus stands among them. There's no sound of entry. No door is opened. He is simply present. He speaks first, offering peace, not explanation. The words settle into the room gently. Some are startled. Others are afraid. He allows time for their fear to ease. He shows them his hands and his side. The wounds are visible. They confirm what words alone cannot. Joy and disbelief mingle. They see him. They struggle to accept what they see. Jesus does not rush them. He remains with them, breathing, present, unthreatening. He asks for food. He eats with them. The act is ordinary. It grounds the moment. Resurrection does not erase humanity, it restores Italiano. The disciples watch him eat, still unsure, still amazed, still present. Thomas is not there. Jesus does not speak of him. He does not explain what is missing. He allows his absence to remain. He speaks to them quietly about forgiveness, about being sent as he was sent, about receiving the Spirit. His words are not shouted. They are given calmly, placed among them like seeds that will take time to grow. Later, Thomas joins them. He listens to what the others say, skeptical, unwilling to accept what he has not seen. When Jesus appears again, he addresses Thomas directly. He invites him to touch the wounds. Thomas does not argue further. Recognition settles into him without resistance. Jesus does not rebuke him harshly. He speaks of belief that comes without seeing, words meant not to shame, but to widen understanding. The moment remains gentle. These meetings continue over days. Jesus appears, speaks, eats, listens, then withdraws again. Haste present, yet not constant. He allows space. He allows adjustment. Resurrection unfolds at a pace that does not overwhelm those receiving it. We are reminded in these days of quiet return, where life has come back without erasing memory, where presence is real but not yet permanent, and where the risen Jesus walks among his followers patiently, allowing recognition, faith, and understanding to arrive slowly, each in its own time. Sometime later, Jesus meets the disciples again by the Sea of Galilee. The water is calm. The shore is familiar. Fishing boats rest where they always have. The men return to what they know, not because they have abandoned what they were given, but because waiting has led them back into ordinary movement. They fish through the night and catch nothing. The work is quiet, repetitive, tiring. Morning begins to form along the horizon. Light spreads slowly across the surface of the water. A figure stands on the shore at a distance. He calls out to them, asking if they have caught anything. They answer simply, without explanation. He tells them to cast the net on the other side of the boat. They do so without argument, without analysis. The net fills. The weight becomes clear. Recognition follows slowly. John speaks first. Peter responds immediately, entering the water and moving toward the shore without hesitation. Jesus has prepared a small fire. Bread is there. Fish rests upon it. He invites them to eat. The meal is shared quietly. No one asks him questions. No one needs explanation. His presence answers what words would only disturb. After they eat, Jesus speaks to Peter. The conversation is slow, deliberate, and personal. He asks Peter if he loves him. The question is repeated. Each time, Peter answers honestly. Without bravado, Jesus responds not with rebuke, but with trust, restoring what had been broken without reopening the wound. He speaks to them about what lies ahead, not in detail, not with urgency. He tells them to follow him. He reminds them that the path will not always be easy. He does not overwhelm them with responsibility. He allows what is given to settle gradually. Jesus remains with them for a time longer. He appears again and again, teaching, listening, walking, sharing meals. His presence becomes familiar in a new way, steady, reassuring, no longer startling. Life has resumed, but it has not returned to what it was. Eventually, he gathers them together. He speaks of the kingdom of God once more. He reminds them of what they have heard from the beginning. He blesses them. His words are few. His tone is calm. When he leaves them, it is without struggle. There is no confusion, no fear. He is taken from their sight gently, without spectacle. They remain where they are, watching quietly, not distressed, not hurried, trusting what they have been given. The disciples return to Jerusalem with a new steadiness. They wait together. They pray. They remain united. The story does not rush beyond this point. It settles. We remain where resurrection has become life again, where presence has turned into trust, and where the risen Jesus has prepared those who follow him not by force, but by remaining with them long enough for fear to loosen and for faith to take root. For after Jesus is no longer seen as before, nothing feels empty. The absence does not behave like loss, and the presence does not behave like proximity. What remains with the disciples is not an image to hold on to, but a steadiness that does not depend on sight. They continue to gather together, not out of fear now, but out of shared grounding, as though something invisible has settled among them and no longer needs to announce itself. They spend long hours together in prayer, not speaking much, not seeking new instruction, simply remaining. The memory of his voice, his way of being, his patience does not fade. It does not intrude either. It rests within them, steady and quiet, guiding without directing. The city around them continues as it always has, unaware that something irreversible has already taken root. They remember his words differently now. What once confused them no longer presses for explanation. Meaning arrives without urgency, not all at once, but gently, like light spreading across a room that has already been prepared to receive it. They do not rush to act. They wait, trusting that movement will come when it is time, just as it always has. The presence of Jesus is no longer tied to roads, meals, or visible gestures. It exists within them, between them, shaping their stillness as much as their readiness. They do not feel abandoned. They do not feel compelled. They feel held, even as they remain fully themselves, aware that the story has not ended, but has shifted into a form that does not require constant attention to remain real. Days pass without being counted. Prayer continues without needing structure. Silence becomes familiar rather than heavy. The waiting is no longer empty. It is full, though not loud. Nothing needs to be proven. Nothing needs to be resolved. The life that was given, taken, and restored now continues without requiring visibility, without needing to return in the same way it left. We remain within this living presence that does not demand recognition, where the risen Christ is no longer encountered as an event, but as a reality that rests quietly within ordinary time, shaping what comes next without forcing it forward. The disciples remain together as the days continue to pass, not marking time by events, but by shared stillness. Their gathering does not feel urgent or strategic. They are not planning what comes next. They are not rehearsing words or preparing arguments. They simply remain, allowing what has been given to settle fully into their lives, trusting that nothing essential will be lost if it is allowed to rest rather than be grasped. Prayer fills the space gently, not always spoken aloud, often held in silence. When words do arise, they do so slowly, without pressure to sound certain or complete. The presence they feel does not answer every question, and yet it steadies them more than answers ever could. What Jesus taught them no longer presses forward as instruction. It lives quietly within them, shaping how they listen. Ote wait how they remain attentive without strain. Outside, the city continues its rhythms without interruption. People pass through streets, attend to daily concerns, speak of ordinary matters. Nothing about the world announces what has changed. And yet, for those who have walked with Jesus, the world feels subtly different, not because it is transformed outwardly, but because they themselves now stand within it differently. Less reactive, less driven, more grounded in something they do not need to name. The memory of Jesus does not fade into the past. It does not replay as nostalgia. It remains present, alive, not as an image or a voice, but as a way of being that continues to shape their inner posture. They notice that fear no longer grips them as before. Anxiety does not rise as quickly. Silence does not feel empty. Even uncertainty is softened, losing its sharp edge. They wait together for what was promised, though they do not imagine it clearly. The spirit he spoke of is not yet experienced as movement or sound. It is sensed only as readiness, as quiet expectancy without impatience. Their waiting is no longer strained. It is calm, trusting that what must come will arrive in its own time, without needing to be summoned. The presence of Christ feels neither distant nor close. It is not something they can locate. It surrounds them without enclosing them. It rests within them without overwhelming them. They do not feel compelled to speak of it loudly. It does not need defense. It does not require constant attention to remain real. We remain in this extended stillness, where life continues without urgency, where faith has settled into trust, and where the living presence of Christ exists quietly among those who have learned that nothing essential needs to be forced into being. As the days continue, the sense of presence no longer arrives as something felt distinctly. It does not announce itself. It does not gather attention. It rests beneath awareness, shaping the way the disciples exist together without becoming an object of thought. They notice that even the act of noticing is softened, replaced by a steadiness that does not fluctuate with mood or circumstance, as though something deeper than feeling has taken root and no longer needs reinforcement. Their conversations grow fewer and slower, not because there is nothing to say, but because silence now carries meaning without effort. When words do arise, they are simple, unadorned, free of urgency. They do not feel the need to explain what they have experienced or to define what they carry. Understanding no longer depends on articulation. It exists quietly, intact, without needing to be brought forward. Prayer continues, but it has changed shape. It no longer feels directed upward or outward. It settles inward, spreading gently through breath and stillness, existing more as presence than as petition. There is no sense that something must be achieved through prayer. It becomes a way of remaining open, of allowing what is already given to continue unfolding without interference. The promise Jesus spoke of no longer feels distant. It does not hover on the edge of expectation. It feels already present, though not yet expressed in form. The disciples wait without tension, aware that what is coming will not arrive as interruption, but as continuation. There is no impatience. There is no sense of delay. Time has loosened its grip. Fear has diminished so gradually that its absence is hardly noticed. Where anxiety once rose quickly, there is now space. Where uncertainty once demanded resolution, there is now trust. They do not feel invulnerable. They feel held. This holding does not protect them from difficulty. It steadies them within it. The presence of Christ no longer feels like something that could leave again. It does not depend on proximity or memory. It does not appear and disappear. It exists as a quiet constant, shaping how they stand, how they listen. Ote wait. It does not demand loyalty. It inspires it naturally, without pressure. We remain era within this thinning of distinction, where presence no longer contrasts with absence, where faith no longer feels like effort, and where the life of Christ continues quietly within those who have learned that what is most real does not need to be held tightly in order to remain. Over time, the sense of presence becomes so familiar that it no longer feels like something added to life. It does not stand apart from breath, from movement, from rest. It weaves itself into the ordinary so completely that it can no longer be isolated or named without losing its truth. The disciples move through their days with a steadiness that does not require explanation, carrying within them a quiet certainty that does not ask to be examined or defined. What Jesus spoke to them no longer returns as remembered words. It exists now as orientation, as an inner alignment that shapes how they respond to others, how they endure uncertainty, how they remain grounded when the world presses inward. They no longer ask whether he is near. Nearness has lost meaning. Presence has ceased to be a location and has become the very ground on which they stand. Silence deepens, not as absence, but as fullness. It does not invite reflection. It does not demand attention. It simply holds. In this silence, there is no need to recall events or anticipate what lies ahead. The past has settled. The future has loosened. What remains is a gentle continuity that does not need to move in order to be alive. Their waiting no longer feels like waiting. It has become a way of being. They are open without striving, attentive without effort, receptive without expectation. Even the promise of what is still to come does not pull them forward. It rests within them quietly, as something already held rather than something yet to arrive. The presence of Christ is no longer felt as guidance from outside or as strength added from beyond. It has become indistinguishable from their own steadiness, their own capacity to remain faithful without urgency. They do not feel elevated. They feel settled. The extraordinary has dissolved into the ordinary without losing its depth. Time continues to pass, but it no longer presses. Moments do not accumulate meaning. Days do not require distinction. Life unfolds without insistence, carried by a quiet trust that does not fluctuate with circumstance. Nothing needs to be concluded. Nothing needs to be emphasized. We remain where presence no longer announces itself, where faith no longer requires articulation, and where the life of Christ continues without form, without boundary, without interruption. What has been given has fully settled, and nothing more needs to be added. Nothing new begins here, and nothing resolves. What is already settled simply remains, without effort, without direction. The presence that once felt distinct no longer presents itself as presence. It is blended so fully into the fabric of ordinary being that it no longer stands apart from silence, from breath, from the simple fact of existing without needing to observe that existence. The disciples no longer feel themselves waiting for anything specific. The promise that once carried anticipation has softened into quiet assurance, not because it has been fulfilled outwardly, but because it no longer presses for fulfillment. Time continues to move, yet it no longer feels like movement. Days pass, but they do not accumulate weight or meaning. They arrive and leave without being counted. Prayer no longer feels like an action taken or words spoken. It exists as openness, as a gentle allowing of what already is. Silence does not interrupt anything. It supports everything. Even memory loosens its hold, no longer replaying scenes or voices, no longer shaping identity. What remains is steadiness without narrative, trust without explanation. The life of Christ no longer appears as story, teaching, or event. It remains as quiet orientation, as a subtle grounding that does not announce itself. There is no need to recall beginnings or endings. There is no need to name what continues. The distinction between what was given and what is lived dissolves completely. Awareness softens. Attention no longer gathers tightly around thoughts or sensations. There is no effort to stay present and no effort to drift away. Both have lost relevance. What remains does not depend on vigilance. It rests naturally, as though nothing could disturb it even if it tried. The world continues around this quiet center without knowing it exists. Sounds come and go. Light shifts. Life moves forward in small, ordinary walleys. None of it pulls strongly enough to require response. Everything is allowed to pass without resistance. We rimanere, where nothing is emphasized, where nothing is withdrawn, where the story no longer needs to be remembered in order to remain true. The language itself begins to thin, not pointing forward, not circling back, but settling into the same stillness that holds everything else without distinction. What remains no longer presents itself as something to be held in awareness. It does not invite reflection or response. It rests beneath thought, beneath memory, beneath the need to recognize what is happening. There is no sense of continuing forward and no sense of stopping. The movement that once shaped the story has softened into stillness so complete that it no longer contrasts with motion at all. The presence that once guided, steadied, and accompanied has dissolved into the texture of being itself. It is not near or far. It does not arrive or withdraw. It simply does not separate itself enough to be noticed. Breath continues, uncounted. The body rests without calling attention to itself. Sensation loses definition and becomes background, then loses even that distinction. Time loosens further. Moments do not line up behind one another. There is no anticipation of what comes next, and no reference to what has passed. The sense of sequence fades, gently, not collapsing, not breaking, but thinning, until it no longer organizes experience. What remains does not exist inside time. It rests without reference. Thought appears only faintly now, without cohesion, without direction. It does not gather into meaning. It does not linger. Each trace dissolves before it can form shape. Attention no longer follows. There is no effort required to let go. Letting go has already happened, quietly, without needing to be named. The story no longer feels like a story. The life that was told no longer feels told. It does not replay, it does not resolve. It does not return. It simply remains as quiet, grounding, indistinguishable from stillness, indistinguishable from rest. Nothing needs to be remembered for it to remain true. Silence deepens, but it does not close in. It opens outward, becoming wide and gentle, holding everything without pressure. Sound, if it arises, fades immediately, unable to gather significance. Language itself thins to the point where it no longer points to anything beyond itself, then thins further, becoming almost indistinguishable from the quiet it moves within. There is no ending here. Nothing completes. Nothing fades out as an event. The quiet does not resolve into darkness or into light. It remains neutral, even undisturbed. What is present does not know itself as present. What rests does not know itself as resting. Everything is allowed to remain exactly as it is, without correction, without direction, without need. The stillness holds without holding. The silence continues without continuing. Nothing draws the tension back. Nothing asks to be followed. The quiet remains.